Welcome to the PODS Writing Workshop. This 4 steps to write an effective essay entails purpose, outline, detail, and style. In the first session, we focused on purpose. Why are we writing? The second step, we're going to focus today on outlining. In the third session, we're going to deal with detail. And in the fourth session, we're going to deal with style. As I stated before, today we're going to focus on the outline. Why do we care about detail after the outline? Well, one of the things you'll note is that the detail will help us to fill in the outline with more effective writing, that after outlining, we can then begin to develop our paper and put together the paragraphs that mirror and match our thesis and our initial purpose. The other aspect of this 4-step process is style. After we write an effective essay, we must consider the style by which people will read the effective essay. And in doing so, we're going to spend time understanding how to order our pages, how to space out that information, how to ensure we have proper margins. We're going to look at font. We're going to see sample papers and all the other aspects of citing and documenting our research. But as we move to this session, let's take a step back and look at our first session. Our first session in purpose really focused on what was our overall intent. Did we have a thesis? Did we have an introductory paragraph? Did we have any idea of what we were seeking to accomplish? Once we established what we were seeking to accomplish, we then want to begin to outline that. Well, before we get into the details of outlining, I want to go back to one of the points I made in the first presentation. It is very important that we have support from our pod. And what's the pod? It's the group of people who have a lot of contact with each other, but limited contact with people outside the group. So you're finding yourself in a group because you're in the same class together, the same cohort together, or working on the same degree, either at different schools or even at Johns Hopkins University. But in doing so, you'll discover that their opportunity to read your paper is actually supportive for you. So I say all that to say that today I want to start with, don't trust me and don't trust yourself. Research has consistently shown that we need a guide for decision-making. In the book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman summarizes our thinking as 2 systems. The first one is intuition, where we often think very fast. We make decisions without considering all the facts. And in the second system, it's more deliberative processing. And as we deliberate, we think slow. These systems help to shape our judgment and ultimately affect how we make decisions, finalize our assumptions as facts, and miss the opportunity to test those assumptions. I bring this to you because I don't want us to think that academic writing is simply writing based off of what we see without taking the time to academically analyze and process that information. In the book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman uses the acronym you see on the screen, WYSIATI. What you see is all there is. And I think this is very important as it relates to outlining. Because in this 4-phased approach, what we see in our process, our approach, and our thinking is often all we have to make an assessment off of. So when you come up with the purpose for your writing, it's important that that purpose is not only rooted in your previous understanding of what that academic question is, but you begin to develop an academic question that can be either conclusively verified, denied, rejected, or saying that, hey, I don't have enough information to make a conclusion. So what we see is often all there is. And that's why it's important that our purpose, that we brainstorm, we choose a proper and appropriate topic, we make the right assessment for our hypothesis, what's the question or the educated guess we want to make, and decide the outcome of the purpose. Why are we writing this? And then we use that information to create a structure, organize our ideas in order, ask someone in our pod, remember the group of individuals that you're close with or that you're studying with or that you know, that you trust their feedback, to help you with the flow and support. We then move to detail to fill in the gaps: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then finally, we finalize our paper by polishing it with style. So the first slide I want to present to you today as it relates to outlining beyond what you see as all there is that we must plan our work. So plan your work and work your plan. What does that mean? Well, to plan your work and work your plan means that you should outline for multiple reasons. The first one is structure. The structure helps you to organize. The organization helps you to actually see what it is you're going to write about. So that is your visualizing. You then progress logically, making the question or the statement to yourself very clear. That is what I'm saying logically connected to the next statement or argument that I plan to prove or disprove. And that's how we strengthen our argument. So what should I outline? Or why should I outline is actually the question here. Why should I outline is related to structuring, organizing, visualizing, progressing logically, and strengthening our argument. Now, if you're going to work the outline or work through the outline, one of the things that this presentation is focusing on is the content in the outline. This is not a session to focus on outlining formally or structuring your outline formally, but more so how we write, starting with our thinking and our processing. And when outlining, one of the key terms that people will often use is called a working outline. And it's called a working outline because your outline will constantly need work. So it's not a finished or final outline, but it's an outline that you use to continually, one, keep editing as you research. Two, structure your ideas. Three, test your assumptions. And four, finalize your plans. Now, there are three questions we really should consider and ask ourselves. Is there something missing? And when we get to the examples of outlining, and those examples are coming up, and we'll spend more time there, we really want to ask ourselves, what's truly missing in my thinking as I begin to put my thoughts down on paper, which is truly what the outline is for? Well, the first question is there something missing chronologically? As we think about chronology, we think about a temporal relationship or a time-based relationship. And that time-based relationship means that there must be something that moves in order of time. In order for you to cook, you must first have heat. In order for there to be a catalyst, there must be some reaction or something that causes the reaction to speed up. Well, those things actually happen chronologically. First, second, third, fourth, and so on. The other aspect of chronology could be time. You can't get to 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock until you first got to 10 o'clock or 10:30, 9 o'clock or 9:30. So when we're outlining, if our information is out of chronological order, the question becomes, one, are we going to explain why it's not chronologically ordered? Or two, how we get it back to making some logical, chronological representation. And that's the other thing about chronology. If I go back one, chronology, if you look at the word there, chrono, meaning time or the movement of time, and then logical, meaning that that time has to be ordered. There's a ordering process that has to take place. Now, speaking of order, we think about cause and effect. Cause and effect. Oftentimes, we think about the effect of things, but we often don't consider the cause. Some call that the first principle. If we think about a building, what's the foundation before you actually build the building? There's a cause and an effect. If you want to get from one side of a gorge or a side of an open space, you either need a road, a bridge, or something to connect the two. So when we think about a bridge, that is the road that takes us from cause to effect. When you're developing your outline, kind of what we spoke about with chronology or chronological thinking, is the cause and effect related? If you were going to go from one part of the world to another part of the world, you must consider in which means you use to travel. If you wanted to go from California to Singapore, you have to consider boat, plane. But if there's a cause and effect to move in that direction, could we take a train? Could you swim there? Could you walk there? There has to be a cause and effect. In order for this thing to happen, the effect, what caused it? What was the reaction that you must consider for the two things that you actually wrote about to make sense? If you say that someone walked from California to Singapore, what evidence do you have to support that? What's the cause and effect in your thinking? And how is this actually something that someone could believe? So that goes to our next statement about process. It's very important that we ask the question about process. As I just used the analogy of walking from California to Singapore across the Pacific Ocean, is that process realistic? And we also have to consider in our outlining, are we capturing the process of information very clearly so that people can follow our flow? So the only way we can do that is to consider our plans, which is truly our outline. But it's not just simply thinking about chronology, thinking about cause and effect, or thinking about process, as much as it is taking those three questions and coming back and looking forward to evaluate, and then look backward based on the evaluation to ask, can I move this information forward? And when I say move it forward, I'm not simply saying you just start writing. I'm saying the evaluation of your information based on what you have already written, past tense, with the new information you gained, is the future going to remain the same, meaning that you're going to keep what you have written, or are you going to change it based on new information? And that's where the chronological, that's where the assessment of cause and effect, and that's where processing and making sure processes actually work together help us to evaluate and evaluate again. And that's why this outlining process is a working outline, because it can't just simply be that we write it and leave it. So here again, we come back to some other questions in our evaluation. Yes, we asked, was it chronological? That's a time-based measure. We asked, was it a cause and effect? What was there a reaction or something that happened causing something else to result? Then there's also the question of whether it was logical. Is the process something that someone can actually follow? And here we must consider that every statement we make is not always logical. Going back to the book I mentioned earlier and the research around how our thinking is often corrupted with our bias or lack of information. We jump to conclusions based on limited information. And in academic writing, we cannot do that. That's why we look for peer-reviewed articles and we look for information that can be verified, tested, or disproven, where you actually recognize the null hypothesis, you reject or accept the null hypothesis, but we can't make assumptions to say, oh, that is actually true. All we can say based off of our confidence interval or the alpha and information we have, and I'm talking statistics here, is that it is logically possible that this could be true because we accept or reject the null hypothesis. And in doing so, we then make a coherent statement. Based on the dog barking, the dog wants a treat. If the dog has already eaten, then the next coherent statement could be, well, the dog has already eaten. Since the dog is barking, maybe the dog wants attention or the dog sees something that he's trying to or she's trying to get our attention. We don't simply say that dog is barking because the dog wants to travel or the dog wants to go across seas or the dog wants to go to a place that we can't even connect the statements. Or the dog wants to go to the moon. Is that statement coherent? What facts or what information are we using to make those statements? And that's why it's so important that we outline and we consider what we outline. We don't just outline because we want to simply just write things down. We outline to help order our steps so that our thinking is clear, logical, coherent, and it's sensitive to making sure individuals can follow the flow of our thinking, our research, and our analysis. So how do we do that? Well, in order to do that, you must first start with a clear thesis. That clear thesis will help to develop a process by which you can then write out your outline, and it keeps pointing back to your original statement, which is the thesis. Now, the thesis will come up constantly throughout these 4 sessions because starting with the thesis is going to be your purpose. Without a clear thesis statement, there is no analysis that you can make because what you'll be doing is capturing information, but never tying it back to a conclusive statement that you've made. So you must first have a thesis. Second, you must consider that your outline really is about the main points. We're not at the point of detail yet. We're only capturing the outline of the puzzle. We're putting the puzzle pieces there to make sure that as we begin to fill in the detail, that we can clearly see the picture that helps to support our original thesis. So what is that detail that we're looking to really put forward? We're trying to put forward supporting ideas that say to the thesis, you're either correct or incorrect based on the research that I've done. And your thesis can simply be a supportive statement, it could be a denying statement, or it could be informational. But in either sense, it must support the original ideas that you put forward. And support does not mean approve or disapprove. It could simply be that it is now following the logical, coherent understanding of how the information flows from one place to the next. And that's in our thinking. So the only way we really get to understanding that detail, those specific ideas, is that we must first have a thesis, we must have main points, and then following those main points, we can then begin to fill in the supporting ideas that lead us to specific details. And that is our presentation for the next time, which is our third session, detail. But I want to talk today about all of this coming together around structuring your ideas. So, how do we structure our ideas? Well, in outlining to structure ideas, there are several rules that we must follow. And I'm going to give you 4 today just to make it easy. The first rule is that we must be definitive in our statement. You must be definitive in your statements. As you had a thesis, you made a statement that you're now looking to support. So you can't be vague, but you must be specific and conclusive in your outline. That's what definitive is, meaning that, and I'll show you an example shortly, that as we move forward from our original thesis and supporting ideas and main points, we begin to think about, is what I'm saying in my outline supportive of my original thought or statement that I made in my thesis? So here today, we have rule 1, be definitive. So what does it mean to be definite versus indefinite? Look at the screen, and we'll take our time here. We only have a few more slides to go, so I want to take the time to really dig into examples. An indefinite is the Wars of the Roses. Now, you don't need to know the detail of the Wars of the Roses in order for you to write this paper, because you're going to research it. You're going to do academic researching. You're going to use rigor, and you're going to find the information. Well, an indefinite outline would look like this. On the left-hand side, the Wars of the Roses. Well, when they began. Why? Each of those are indefinite because they don't really help you to write your paper. They don't help you to clarify your thoughts, and they don't help you to answer the 3 questions of whether or not they're logical, whether or not they're coherent, whether or not they meet some chronology. Is there a time matter in here? Or whether or not they actually come together in a process. So to be definite, look at the right-hand side. The Wars of the Roses. Well, the first point you may write in your outline is that it started in 1455. And this outline is a specific outline that allows for you to be concrete in your information, concise and clear. That now, if you were to write your topic sentence to say, the Wars of the Roses have a historical context, period. The Wars of the Roses started in 1455, period. The Wars of the Roses were caused by a rivalry between houses of York and Lancaster. You're now starting to formulate a paragraph based off of this outline. But if you were to go back to the indefinite, the Wars of the Roses, period. When they began, period. Why did they begin? That's why we want the outline to help us to formulate our ideas and thoughts by making sure that our information is definite and clear. Rule 2. So the first rule, and we're going to summarize all of this, the first rule was make sure that you use definite or definitive, conclusive information in your outline. Step 2, use informative logic. Use informative logic. So what is informative logic? That's rule number 2. Informative logic is simply that the information you use must be informed and clear in a sense that it's interconnected, that you don't just break it out for the purpose of breaking it out and dividing it unnecessarily. So, informative logic is your logical thinking informing you to help you clarify the information that you're going to eventually write about. The Smithsonian Institution on the left hand side, first division, established by an Englishman. Second division, James Smithson. And underneath James Smithson, they divided it even further in 1846. But is that really informative? Is that logical? Yes, we actually see that each of those support each other. But if you wanted to really think about how they're connected, the Smithsonian Institution on the right-hand side, the logical division, would be that simply the Smithsonian Institution was established by James Smithson in 1846. So you see the difference there that you could, on the left-hand side, write a paragraph, the Smithsonian Institution, period. It was established by an Englishman, period. His name was James Smithson, period. He was born in 1846. It's not really a logical, informative thinking. But if you go to the right-hand side, the Smithsonian Institution, which was established by James Smithson in 1846, is an institution that we use, and then you can fill in the background. It doesn't mean that each line there is specifically used the way you would in a sentence outline, but it just helps you to gather your thoughts. And the point that we're making about an informative, logical division is that you must consider, are your thoughts jagged on the left-hand side, unnecessarily dividing them, or are they informative and clear and logical on the right-hand side to help you to make a decision that when you're writing, you can decide if this information can be combined, if you can leave it out, is it helpful, or is it deterring you from actually being able to think through the clear, coherent thinking we were talking about earlier. So here we make a plan and we work it to completion. Step 3. What is this plan that we're working to completion? Well, we want to make sure that our headings are equal. And the headings would be the first line that you would put in your outline. You're going to create a small outline and you're just going to basically mirror it with each individual main point, your facts, that's your headings. As we talked about, going back previously, I go back one, the heading would be the Smithsonian Institution. The divisions would be established by James Smithson. So when we think about this, again, we want our headings to be equal and we want our divisions to be equal. So what do we mean by equal? Well, we want to make sure first that our flow is parallel. We want to be very careful not to create paragraphs and allow for information to just run on, but actually break it out in a manner that individuals, your instructors, your teachers, those in your pod who are reading this can follow a parallel analysis that you have established. Is your grammar and your tense the same? Well, the grammar, your nouns, your pronouns, the topics or the sentences, you can pick one. Are they the same? And the reason why I say the topics or sentences, I'm going to show you some topic outlines. Well, one topic outline. I'm going to show you a sentence outline. But also, if you're going to use nouns or pronouns as your heading, all your headings should be nouns and pronouns. If you're going to use a verb, all of your headings and divisions should mirror that. So that way, as you write, you're keeping with the same tense, present tense, past tense, and making sure that you maintain some order in your thinking. That's how we become coherent. So here we see unequal subheads. They would be divisions. They just call them subheads here. So job opportunities in Wisconsin. And we're going to slow down here and really take a moment to look at this. I want you to take a moment and take your time to look and see what you see that's unequal about the subheads. And then take a look at the right-hand side and compare and contrast what you think would make them equal. I want to give you about 30 seconds here to really look at that. Okay. So unequal subheads, job opportunities in Wisconsin, raising crops, white collar work, dairy farms, factory jobs, breweries. So why would we say that those subheadings are unequal? Well, first, raising crops is it's not really a job. It's a verb. It's you're saying what you're doing. It's not really a title. You don't have a title of raising crops. It may be farming or something of that effect, but it's very specific. Then you come to B, white collar work. Well, what does that mean? It's not really clear. So you go from very specific, hey, this is a task you would do in a job, versus white collar work, which is a category, a description that you would use to describe a person in a industry of work, not even a job. Dairy farms, that's not a job opportunity. That's a place where a person may work. D, factory jobs. Again, those job opportunities that you say are in Wisconsin, factory jobs is not really clear. And then breweries. Well, what is the job opportunity? You're just telling me an industry that I can work in. And that's why we have to consider the unequal nature of what we're saying. If you're going to clarify that there are job opportunities in Wisconsin, let's look at the right-hand side. Job opportunities in Wisconsin. One, agriculture. And then you can break that out even more and describe those agricultural jobs. And if you wanted to get into the detail of what companies are hiring or what farms are hiring for agriculture, you can describe that in more detail. But it's an organization that shows that B, there are job opportunities in Wisconsin in the business sector. You can then describe maybe they are banks or they are financial institutions. And then you can describe the institution itself and the job. But there you see an organization that says, hey, we have a category called agriculture, we have a category called business, and then we have a category called industry. And underneath that, you would describe what industry means, and you would then list the actual jobs themselves, the job opportunities. Compare unequal subheads with equal subheads. Can you see what actually makes them not relevant to one another, to the point where we said again that we wanted these things to be what? We wanted these things to be equal and organized. And when we go back to our previous slide, we want to go back to understand what was the rule. Make a plan and work it to completion. Make sure that everything is equal and parallel. Use the same grammar and tense so that you can then follow the same flow. Here we see unequal subheads, job opportunities in Wisconsin. On the equal side, A is the same, that's your heading. But lowercase a, raising crops, that is not equal to white collar work, nor is it equal to dairy farms, factory jobs, or breweries. And what we notice there is that each of them leaves a person wondering, where are the job opportunities? Versus on the equal subheads, we see that it is not only a plan that we've worked to completion, but we've actually clarified that the job opportunities actually are in different sectors of work. And that's what we mean by completion. It's not that you have to have all the answers, but you begin to analyze and clarify what you wanted people to receive from your outline. And this, again, is not about outlining as much as it is outlining your thoughts so that you can write your paper. Now, agriculture, business, and industry, that helps me clarify that there are job opportunities available for me in different sectors. What about these unequal headings and these equal headings? I'm going to give you 30 seconds here to really think about it. If you're with someone, talk about it and consider what makes it unequal. 30 seconds. Okay, that's been 30 seconds. So unequal headings and equal headings. Growing roses. Well, we see that they're both, the headings are the same. What about the basic steps? They both say basic steps. But here we go back to the coherent, logical, and process-oriented information. Basic steps for growing roses. If we go from bottom up, the basic steps on the unequal heading side. Well, basic steps, growing the plant. That's not really clear. It actually is more of a process in itself. And it doesn't help to clarify if you were writing a paragraph. Growing roses includes some basic steps, period. First step, growing the plant, period. The second step is mildew. The third step are insect pests. And the fourth step, using a spray gun. Are they really steps to growing roses? Or are they ways that we may go about taking care of roses? That we may go about planting or watering, fertilizing, spraying, and protecting the rose? So we go back to equal headings. Since growing is a process, it shows process orientation, ing, and it's about verb tense going forward, means that it's actually taking place over a period of time. It's temporal or it's chronological. We go back to growing roses. I'm on the right-hand side where it says equal headings. Then you look at where it says basic steps. But the first step will be planting. Planting. So the first step, orderly, coherent, process-oriented, you must first plant the rose. The second step, now that the plant is planted or the rose is planted, you want to water it. Okay, so now you have it watered. It needs water to grow. The third step would be fertilizing it. Okay, now we planted the rose, we watered the rose, we fertilized the rose, and you want to keep it safe. You want to spray the roses. So if I were to write a paragraph off of the right-hand side where it says equal headings, I would say something like, growing roses is a beautiful process, period. There are several basic steps included in growing roses, period. The first step involves planting. You want to plant the rose and make sure that it is in soil that is ready for it to settle in. It will take time, period. The second step, after the rose is planted, is ensuring that you water the plant. Watering is most important to keep the rose healthy. The third step, after you've watered it and planted it, involves fertilizing the rose. Roses love fertilizer. They grow really big, beautiful, bright colors, and they smell really good as they filter the fertilizer. And that is through the watered soil that they've been planted in. And finally, protecting that beautiful rose after it blossoms involves spraying, period. That is a clear, coherent, process-oriented paragraph that is based off of our outline on the right-hand side compared to our previous statement of the unequal headings of growing roses involves basic steps, of growing the plant, mildew, insect pest, and using a spray gun. You can quickly see, I hope, that having an outline is very helpful and most important in clarifying what statement you're actually trying to get across. So here we are looking at this topic outline. Well, it's called a topic outline because we actually only have topics here. So the topic that we're addressing is college application process. Now, it's not a topic outline because we're addressing a topic. It's a topic outline because the headings and subheadings or divisions each have topics that they speak to. As the previous example has shown that growing roses involves basic steps. We didn't list them out in sentences. We just gave them topics or a brief summary. Here, the first heading, choose desired colleges. Visit and evaluate college campuses. That falls under choosing desired colleges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop for about 30 seconds to 45 seconds. I'm going to give you a little time to think through how you see the logic of the topic outline flowing from heading to subheading to division. So heading I, subheading A and B, and then divisions of 1 and 2. So you have about 30 seconds to 45 seconds. And I'll come right back. Okay. So this topic outline, we looked at college application process. Choose desired colleges is our first step. So when you were thinking about choosing a college, your first step was, hey, I want to actually apply, but I must first choose a desired college. So what steps do you take? The first step, you visit and evaluate the college campuses. Maybe you don't have an opportunity to go to that college immediately. So the second step is, I can't physically go there right now, but I'm going to visit and evaluate the college website. So in its own way, I'm still evaluating the campus and I'm going to schedule an appointment. But under visiting the college website, there are two things I'm going to do while I'm there. The first one is look for interesting classes. Does this school offer what I desire? That's why it's a desired college. Two, I'm going to note important statistics. Hey, what is it about that school that makes me want to either go there or consider that they would accept me? The second heading is prepare my application. So I've decided that I actually want to apply to that school because this is about the topic of college application process. After I choose the right school, I prepare my application. The subheading for that would be to write my personal statement. And each of these could be different based on what the school requires. Here, under writing my personal statement, I'm going to choose an interesting topic. I'm going to describe an influential person in my life. Those two influential people that I'm considering are my favorite high school teacher or my grandparent. Now it says describe an influential person in your life. Now, this outline shows that this person is thinking through their process and only describing that they have two choices in who they consider influential. And that doesn't mean that the final outcome will be that they write two papers with two different personal statements, but that their choices right now and they're outlining, because we haven't gotten to step 3, detail, and finalizing with style is simply detailed in their outline. And then B, choose an interesting topic. Describe a challenging life event. So they're just detailing out what is actually part of the application process that they must prepare. Hey, I have a choice between describing an influential person in my life or describing a challenging life event. The second option, include important personal details. Now, this is not an option, but it is a separate subheading that must be included along with the topic they choose. So, in addition to choosing describing an influential person in your life or describing a challenging life event, step 2 must also be included because it is not a subheading or division under choosing an interesting topic. It is a subheading and division under writing the personal statement. So it's in addition to, it's an and statement, not an or statement. Lowercase a, lowercase b are or statements. 1 and 2, under describing an influential person in your life, are or statements. I can write about favorite high school teacher or my grandparent. Step 2, include important personal details. Now, here again, we show some level of and or. So if you consider that you may not put the and in here, but you know, as you go back to filling your application, that you must consider volunteer work and or participation in varsity sports. Include important personal details. Here, the word details helps us to know that there are going to be more than one detail, and you've just listed them out before you begin to write. And then finally, we're going to revise the personal statement. So the preparation for the application to college is first choose a desired school, check out the campus, check out the website, look for interesting classes. Do they have the degree program I'm considering? Hey, are there important statistics I should know? How many students on campus do I know? How many students actually look like me? What are their age groups? Do they offer classes during a certain time period? Prepare my application, write my personal statement, choose which topic I'm going to write about, describe an influential person in my life. Hey, I think maybe my teacher or my grandparent, or I could describe a challenging life event. I also must include important personal details about volunteer work and participation in varsity sports. Maybe I didn't play varsity sports, so I'm just going to talk about my volunteer work. And then finally, after I write it, I'm going to go back and revise it. So here we see how a topic outline can be actually laid out to help you finalize your paper. Now we move to the sentence outline. The sentence outline is really great because the sentence outline allows for you to do the work one time. There's one actual guy who said many years ago, this is I think 18th, 19th century, they came to him and they asked him, how do you get things done so easily? Why? How do you get so much done even? And his statement was, I do it only one time. And he was saying that a lot of times what we do is we sit and ponder things, then we do it, and then we ponder it some more, then we finalize it. Then after we finalize it and turn it in, we ruminate on it, and we don't actually do it well because we're always worried about what the outcome's going to be. Here, a sentence outline helps you to do your research, put it in a sentence, and I'm going to show you on the next slide how that sentence actually becomes a paragraph that you don't even have to really think about much after. So, man-made pollution is the primary cause of global warming. That's a statement. It's a period on the end. It's a full sentence. Greenhouse gas emissions are widely identified by the scientific community to be harmful. So first we said man-made pollution is the primary cause of global warming. Whether or not you believe that to be true, he's making or she's making an important statement to support that. That my support is that greenhouse gas emissions are widely identified by the scientific community to be harmful. So this is not my opinion. My support is that the scientific community has recognized this. And underneath the scientific community, they give an example. The burning of coal and fossil fuels are the primary releasers of hazardous greenhouse gases. So, what they're saying here is if you were to put this all together in a paragraph, I've given you my introductory sentence. I then gave you supportive information. Then I gave you facts that are supportive of my second sentence. Full sentence outlines are often accompanied with an APA reference list on a separate page, sometimes even with it, if it's just a rough outline. And quotes within the outline must also utilize APA in text citations. When we get to detail and style, I'll show you how these two things come together. My dissertation is about 160, 170 pages long. I started with an outline because what I discovered is that if I keep just taking sticky notes and putting them around and moving everything, I'm going to eventually lose the connectivity and the coherence in my writing. So the sentence outline, if you were to combine all that, you go from removing the subheadings and headings and the actual formatting and style, and you wind up with a paragraph. Man-made pollution is the primary cause of global warming. Greenhouse gas emissions are widely identified by the scientific community to be harmful. The burning of coal and fossil fuels are the primary releasers of hazardous greenhouse gases. Let's go back one. The same information, but where you see that it's laid out in a supportive way, it's now combined into a paragraph. That is the beauty of a sentence outline and how a sentence outline becomes a paragraph. And a lot of people love sentence outlines because not only does it allow for you to bring your thoughts together in a coherent way, but also minimizes the amount of time you need to go back and after you wrote it one time, have to write it again. And here, if you already had in your outline what we're going to talk about in session 4, your style, your APA style, your documentation, having it done properly, having the footnotes maybe on your outline if you do it in Word or in Pages on your Mac, you'll have everything you need. So when you remove the formatting and structure, and I'll remember to show you in Microsoft Word the outline setup, that when you go to do this, everything's already there waiting for you. It easily comes together into your final paper. So I have 4 rules that I just laid out for you. The first rule was verify accuracy and avoid complacency. And my apologies, this is the 4th rule, to verify accuracy and avoid complacency. What do I mean by verify accuracy and avoid complacency? Let's take a very quick look at this. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to 45 seconds as we did the last time. And I'm not going to tell you anything yet. And I'll come right back after 30, 45 seconds to talk to you about what this actually means as it relates to verify accuracy and avoid complacency. Be right back. All righty. So 30 to 45 seconds. If you've taken a look at this, you'll realize that there's some overlapping here. And the complacency that I spoke about was that sometimes we can become complacent in the sense that we just start throwing things down on the paper and not really thinking about how accurate they are, not really thinking about how they are either wasting our time or wasting our thought process, or not even really inclusive of our deep thinking and analytical skills. We are academics. So when this information is overlapping, if you take a look at the left-hand side, you'll see where it says transporting freight. Well, both sides say transporting freight. So how can we say that this is overlapping? Well, first, the category that it fits in is that transporting freight is water. Is that a way we transport freight? Or is that a means by which we have to travel across. We have to travel across water. And then the next category is on the ground. Well, you use ships and freighters in water, but then B, on the ground, you use trucks and you can piggyback in trucks. Is that really a good way to represent this information? And then finally, you have their railroads and in the air. Well, transporting freight in water, on the ground, railroads, and in the air. Well, all of those are actually in the air if you want to get technical, but not to be funny here. The water ships and freighters on the ground, would also involve railroads. I mean, it's not flying. And in the air actually goes across water, and you can transport freight many different ways. So let's consider on the right hand side the accuracy, not the complacency on the left hand side. We became complacent and not wanting to push our minds a little further, but we think about the accuracy. On the right hand side, the accuracy is we are transporting freight by shipping, by trucking, by railroads, and by airplanes. If we use shipping, we can think about passenger ships. Sometimes a passenger ship goes out to sea, and underneath, they'll have things that they're going to transport underneath it. That way, the space is not wasted. Freighters, all they do is transport freight. Trucks, that could be inclusive of any type of truck. You see where it says on the left-hand side, piggyback in trucks. Well, trucking is just generally trucking, however you do that. Railroads, loaded into cars or piggyback in trucks. And then D, airplane. So we think about the accuracy of our outline because if we're not accurate and we're complacent, we find ourselves writing unnecessarily, 1, 2, not being analytical, and 3, missing key facts when we go to do our research. So here are the 4 outline rules that I just described for you. And as we close out this presentation and we summarize this, once you consider these 4 rules, the first one, be definitive. Come to a conclusion, make your statement, and finalize what you're trying to say, even noting that you're going to go back and probably clean it up again later. But don't leave too much ambiguity. 2, use informative logic. Is the logic that you're using in your thinking and your outlining informing you, or is it pulling you away from your thesis statement? So make sure it's informative and it's logical. And after you do that, it's time for you to plan it and complete it. Okay, so you have been definitive. You know what you want to write. You know that the logic is there. Let's put it on paper. Let's complete our thought, and then we can always go back and edit it later. But if you're only going to think about it, then you're never going to have an opportunity to go back and edit it because we believe we actually can jump to conclusions. Remember our first earlier discussion about thinking fast and slow, the 2 systems in our brain. We jump to conclusions when we don't have all the facts. So get the facts together. And then finally, the facts. Correct information is accurate information. Correct information is accurate information. Make sure there's accuracy. Make sure that the statements that you're making, that you can verify them. Don't just jump to a conclusion. Go look for correct information. Now, correct information doesn't mean it supports everything that you are writing about. Sometimes it challenges you. Sometimes it's a study that is opposite of what you're hoping for. Don't leave that out. It's still accurate because it's correct in a sense that that study may have disproven one aspect of your analyses. And in doing so, when you do this, you come to your 4 outline rules. And as you do that, you move to finalizing the outline. And in finalizing your outline, you are now finishing step 2 of your purpose, outline, detail, and style writing seminar. I am so excited to see how we progress through our purpose, our outline, and we move into our next session, detail. And in detailing out, we're going to go a little further beyond our outline to start putting together paragraphs and structures that clearly, coherently, chronologically, and accurately represent the information that we've researched and begin to prepare for our final session, style. Thank you for joining. Look forward to you rewinding and going back and learning more information about outlining. And we look forward to you finding a way to represent your information that you've done the hard work to document and clearly get across in your academic writing. Have a great day.